Oh wow, hello, hello. Oh, y'all still have can see my to-dos that I have not still done. They're also written in my journal. So fantastic. Hello, lovelies. We are talking, it's day 2 of us talking about semantic HTML, but way more importantly, it is week 3 of the 10-week bootcamp we're running. So y'all are already 20% done. You are 1/5 of the way through the bootcamp. The whole world is stressful, but this actually doesn't seem too bad. So we're going to be talking a bit more about semantic HTML. Let me get my notes up. Amazing. And if you remember from last week, semantic HTML means writing HTML that carries additional meaning. So if anybody can remind me, what was the cheat? What, not the cheat. Cheat sounds terrible. What was our sort of default for? Whenever you can, use the most blank element possible. And just in case it takes folks a moment to catch up. So yeah, if you've got a obviously the classic example, obviously that's not fair. The classic example, if you've been doing this for ages and ages like me, is instead of using a div element, you might want to use an article element, or you might want to use a specific. Mm, thank you. You caught me just as I was saying. Is wherever possible, we are going to use the most specific HTML element that exists. Fantastic. If y'all see me making a silly face, it's because I've got a kitten tucked into my sweater and I'm worried she's just gonna burst out like a horror movie. But a normal day. We've already got a couple questions. Stunning. We're gonna get to that in just 1 second. I love it. I love it. Oh, that's such a specific question. Sorry. We'll dive into the notes. Mel, this question's so specific and I love it. And we will get to it in just one hot second if that's okay. So before we talk about abbreviations, we're going to start talking about quote inline block and inline quotes. And it hasn't talked about this here in your material, but I see Etta nodding. Backstage, we can see each other. It's quite cool. A little sort of green room for the expert staff. So that means Etta's back there. That these two terms, inline and block, I bet $1 we're going to see these come up a lot when we see CSS come onto the field. So right now, we're talking about block and inline quotes with HTML. But I bet these two concepts of block and inline, I bet we're going to see this again and again and again when we start on CSS. So here, looking at our notes from this, we're going to do this super, super fast because we don't do this a ton of times. A sort of cheat sheet to remember is when you put something inline. Yep, absolutely, after my own heart. Inline stays on the same line unless the content flow would move it to the next line anyway. Block puts it in its own element block. Stunning, stunning, stunning. Thank you. Wow. I'm seeing another stunningly good question, and I actually don't know the answer to that question. So I'm going to ask my most forgiving and most helpful backstage technical expert. Could you look that up, Etta? Thank you. I'm sorry. Sorry for those of you watching not in real time. We've just got a couple really good questions that we're going to get to during the flow of this. If anybody else has any questions about semantic HTML more broadly, quote or inline elements, oh gosh, what else do we have today? Abbreviations in HTML. We did addresses today, didn't we? Whew. Time and semantic elements, and then addresses. Throw them in here. Everything's terrible, but everything's fine. We're going to come up. Cool. So the two big things to remember are inline quotes, quotes that stay in line, and block quote elements. So these are blocks, elements that sort of stand outside the flow, and think of them as sort of blocking the expected flow. They get moved, and they're their own thing, like a planter slowing down traffic in a neighborhood street. Inline quote elements, folks often use the quotation marks instead. But the benefit of using inline quote elements is you have the cite attribute, which you can use to point. at the URL of the source of where that came from. Block quote elements, they're longer standalone quotes, but also, oh gosh, I was going to say inline quote elements have a site attribute. Block quote elements have a site element. I need to fix that, and I'm going to make a note for me to fix that in the notes. Sorry, it's the danger of having notes you let other people see. So inline quote elements, boop, they stay in the same line they've been living on. And you can have a citation, the site attribute, which points at the URL of the source. Block quote elements, they stand alone, and they have a site element that comes after them, which is a visible attribution. All right. Did we have, gosh, I'm not seeing a question about quotes, but if any of y'all have one, throw them in there and we'll hop to them. But the next one we're going to take a look at is abbreviations in HTML. Gosh, I'm sorry that tech loves acronyms and initialisms, just lots of different types of abbreviation. So we can use a special HTML element that adds semantic context to the text when an abbreviation is being used. And this is really, really useful for folks using assistive technology to be like, hey, is HTML here a brand name I haven't heard of? Where we might use one of the semantic elements we learned yesterday. Or perhaps if I've never heard of HTML before, what kind of semantic clue can we give someone using assistive technologies that this is an abbreviation or an initialism? By itself, this element doesn't add a lot of additional information except for giving your user or the machine, if you're looking to make it easier for machines to read, a hint that this is an abbreviation. But you can use a title element here, and that lets you share the unabbreviated meaning of the term. For folks using assistive technologies and for folks using a lot of modern browsers, it means that if you hover over a abbreviation element that has text in it and has the title attribute, not title element. I'll fix that too. My apologies. And the title attribute set, hovering over that with your mouse pointer in most modern browsers means it'll show what the abbreviation stands for in a little tooltip, which I love, 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 love. We had a question about these. And I was saying, hey, I'm a little confused about where the abbreviation tag should be used. For example, if you have a nav with the QA, do you use abbreviation with a title or without or not at all? Heck, this is a really good question. I'm so sorry that I admit I almost never find myself using the abbreviation tag, and I think I should a little more often than I do. Would I use it for some like QA or FAQ? This might be a point where it's a little bit, and I know I say this a lot, this might be sort of personal philosophy to say, do you know what? This abbreviation, QA, I think QA or maybe FAQ, I think this is so common in day-to-day use that I might not use it. Or, hey, do you know what? I'm using an abbreviation that feels a little specific, that feels. Or maybe my audience has a lot of folks who aren't native speakers of the language I'm using. I want to go ahead and be clear what this abbreviation means. So I'm so sorry that when to use it and when not to use it is kind of a very philosophical approach. Yeah, I'm sorry that that's not a very satisfying way to do it. Oh, Bramble has a really good point. So Bramble's like, hey. So when we use the abbreviation element, we're telling the computer or the browser or the assistive technology, we're telling a sort of a machine readable way to say, hey, heads up, this is an abbreviation. But with the real value, the beautiful thing that we can pass to a user here is using that title attribute to be like, hey, I said HTML, but if you haven't seen this before, what I mean is, and if anybody can remind me, what does HTML stand for? This is not a quiz. Everything's fine. And thank you so much, because I love, love, love when folks are not just like, here's a question, but just here's a better way to clarify it. So, for example, I'd start with a paragraph because I've put this inside a text. The abbreviation here, YOLO, is part of a paragraph text. It's not like a standalone thing. And I've added the title attribute, you only live once, to make the sentence YOLO, which is marked as the abbreviation, which hovering over this on many major browsers would show you only live once, is very dated slang. And I think that might be a bit true. And Lucia's after my own heart. Lucia's like, hey, 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 HTML, hypertext markup language, stunning. Eulado makes a solid point to say, well, when we make our sites more machine readable, we do help search engine bots find us better, but also AI training, scraping. Yeah, I do not disagree with you. I am reasonably robustly opinionated about AI scraping. We're not going to, so just for context, block and inline quotes, I think are going to be the ones we use more often. I don't really, yeah, I see folks not using tons. If you don't retain the syntax for how to do abbreviations and you need to come back and look it up next time you use it, that's completely fine. What I do think you're going to use a lot, and Eulada's after my own heart, this is just about what I was going to say. So when you make your HTML more machine readable, sure, it makes it easier for machines to read it, like the bots that make it easier for search engine users to find you, or the scrapers who are trying to steal your intellectual knowledge and put it in AI models. But it also means that assistive technologies work better when you add semantic HTML to make your pages more machine readable. Users who use screen readers, and screen readers are a common type of assistive technology, will listen to the content of your website being read to them, which can take a long time. Can you imagine if you every single word on this page in order to get where you needed to go? Yikes. Out loud? Oof. By using semantic HTML to mark information they might be looking out for or might be important to them, you allow users using assistive technology like screen readers to skip right to the stuff they need. And one piece of information on your website that might be especially important are addresses. So the address element is used to mark up ways folks can contact you on your website. Using address elements can actually add extra functionality for other users when they're combined with other elements and when they're combined with appropriate attributes. If you add an address element that has a phone number in it, yes, it's a phone number, stunning. You can add linking functionality with an anchor element to make it so that users on some devices can just click that phone number and call you. Stunning. Similarly, a mail to tag in your address element when you're pointing at a target email address can make it super easy for your users to email you, but can also result in more spam. I'm going to be asking this later on when we look at one of the exercises, but the exercise we're going to be doing in a second includes someone who put a phone number and an email address on the example website. Can y'all have a think about like when you might want to include phone numbers and email addresses and when you might want to not do them? Ha ha ha. So I know you all seem like really trusting people. There are some things in programming that are super duper cursed, super cursed. And some of them are cursed for important reasons, and some of them are cursed for weird reasons. Times are super duper cursed in programming. Hang on just a second. And the reason that times are so difficult in programming is that time zones are very difficult in the real world. For those of us who are living in a country that has just one time zone, you say, no, it's fine. I know that my friend who lives in Berlin is 2 hours away, except for the times that they're not. So some places have daylight savings time. Some places have a 1 hour offset. Some places have a half-hour offset. Time is super duper complicated. But there's amazing news. Time doesn't have to be complicated for us yet. I want to preview that a lot of times when we're talking about time in web development and programming, it's a lot harder than it sounds. But here, it is not harder than it sounds yet. So, gosh, I see a point of feedback. I'm going to grab that and make sure I put that in. Ooh, this is a good one as well. So, actually, that's a really good point. Time in programming is almost always difficult because of time zones, but time and date in programming is also occasionally difficult because everybody in the entire world uses one standard, which is day, month, year, hour, minute for date times. And America, where I'm originally from, uh, does dates in a different way. Just to be silly, just because we want to. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the time element. The time element allows us to go onto our page and say, hey, I've said 8 o'clock here, or I've said Tuesday, March 3rd at 8 o'clock. If I just want to mark, this is a time. Oh, gosh. And actually, while we're talking about, I'm going to bounce back and forth, while we're talking about things that are cursed in programming, um, time and date is one of them, but also names for people and names for naming is cursed as well. And we'll learn about that later on. But I actually really like this as well. Falsehoods programmers believe about names. And actually, I'm so sorry, Uladil, if I can ask you to remind me about this when we start talking about forms and form validation, this is going to be a really useful thing to come back and talk about. Okay, so if I'm saying on my website, our tea party will be at 4 p.m. on Tuesday. 4 p.m. on Tuesday, I can wrap that in a time element, just like how it is, and everything's fine. But if I want it to be wildly more specific, I want to say, hey, I want to see a date time element. And that's going to be to mark specific dates and times in a way that's machine readable. So we talked briefly about, oh gosh, I love this question. Sorry. We talked briefly about, hey, one of the things that's difficult about times and dates is everybody uses one standard day to day. And that's not true. Most people use one standard for day, month, year for writing dates, whereas the US uses, gosh, do we use month, day, year? I I'm almost sure that's right, and that sounds so wrong. I've been gone for a long time. But when we're writing the date time element, we're going to be writing this with a different convention. We're going to be using the Miss Rachel's backing me up, and Miss Rachel's like, hey, genuinely in the States, it's month, day, year. Okay, for like May the 4th. Sorry, I've been gone a long time, y'all. So okay, US, right? Okay, here we go. The standard convention and it may indeed be a standard in the US, is to write month, day, year. So today would be 5/11/2026. Whereas here in the UK, it is 11/5/2026. And I had a question I was excited about. ISO, the International Standards Organization. Yes, we talk about standards a lot, right? It's because I like standards. Um, the International Standards Organization is a organization, which kind of makes sense from the abbreviation, from the initialism we have here. So ISO, if you were writing this in your blog about what you've learned, you probably wrap this in an abbreviation element. Yeah. So ISO, the International Standards Organization, all they do is standards. So they set standards, they approve standards, they update standards, and they have a standard. They have way more than one standard for dates and time, but they have a standard for date and time that we use for the date time element. And we're actually going to use a standard that feels like this for a lot of programming. So if you want, oh gosh, if you wanted to do a little bit more research and you're just curious, it might be fun to look up ISO. I really like the ISO standards for languages. So the ISO standard for dates and time always starts at the biggest unit and goes to the smallest unit. Yeah, I like to picture it as building a pyramid of dates and time. So we're going to start at the year. Today is 2026. We've got a dash. It is May. So we've gone from the year, the biggest unit, boom, to the month, the next smallest unit. And then on top of that, we're going to set the date, the 11th. but, no, and if you write date time, you can just write the date in 2026 05/11. If you want to add the time after it, add a T after that and add using the 24-hour clock time. For example, today I woke up at 2020. Oh, that's a lie. 2026 05/11 time for T 0600. Ooh, ooh, ooh. So Alistair's saying, hey, there's two different types of time standards. And Mel, oh, I'm so sorry, my love, because I'm going to cackle when I say this. And Mel's saying, oh, are there two different standards for time? Oh, there's so many standards for time. Standards are gosh, Etta, if it's not a bother, could you grab that XKCD about standards, please, if it's easy to, thank you. There is always an extra standard. I'm sorry, but the one we're caring about here is just the ISO date standards. Everything stressful, but this we don't need. Deeply understanding how many time and date standards there are, that is not a today problem. That's not even a next week problem. That's a if you're real curious and want to have a poke around. And Euladil was saying, hey, does date time automatically process the dates and time in UTC time zone or is an arbitrary time zone? And I'm so sorry. I am always throwing stuff at Etta because I'm a mean person. And I asked Etta for this, and Etta was really helpful in saying it doesn't default to UTC. It's just taking the text, the plain text. So it's not doing anything fancy behind it. Fantastic. What we're going to do now is we're going to do a little bit of, oh, heck, I've just left you hanging. What we're going to do now is actually take a little tiny breather where we look at this comic together because I was delighted. So standards, there are standards for everything. The standards we most talk about when we're talking about web development are web standards. And those are made by the W3C, the World Wide Web Committee, Convention? World Wide Web Friends. Sorry, I've blanked on the initialism. Consortium. Thank you. The World Wide Web Consortium is the standards organization that makes the, thank you very much, Edda, is the standards organization who makes the, all of y'all are helping me out. They're like, Jess, how'd you forget consortium? That's terrible. Y'all are being real gentle though. Who make the shared standards for what we put in different programming languages, what the attributes we're talking about for our HTML elements, but how standards proliferate, how we get more and more. And if the situation is we have 14 competing standards for time, oh no, somebody will say 14 standards. That's not on. We need to sit down and we need to make one standard that everyone will use instead of these 15. And a lot of times people do that. And as soon as they're done, that means there are now 15 competing standards. Sorry, in folks who get to work with standards a lot, we've talked about the cursed nature of standards so much that it's sort of a reflex to be like, oh, get me the XKCD comic, please. We are not going to look at all of this, if that's okay, because a lot of this we've done before. And I don't, learning web development, it's hard, right? And it's real tempting to say, hey, I want to hold your hand the whole way, because I do want to hold your hand the whole way. But some of the muscle memory of doing this on your own means I'm going to abandon you for some of this. So we're going to start coding. We're just going to talk this out, and I'm going to skip ahead. So what this workshop is doing, which I'm going to mostly ask you to do on your own, is start with the boilerplate and add an H1. But we've done that before. I'm going to skip all the way ahead to step 5, because on step 5, we're going to see something that we haven't seen before. Oh, wait, I lied. So step 5 is right before we see something we haven't seen before. On step 5, I'm adding a main element and adding 3 sections inside it. Can anybody tell me? I don't think we've explicitly talked about the main element too much, but can anybody either guess or maybe give me a hint or a tip? What is the main element doing here, and why are my sections inside it? We've got our H1 and this little bit of text here, but what does main mean here? I'm going to put 3 sections in here. What I'm really going to do is open and close one section. I'm going to copy it 3 times, or 2 more times. Here I've got a main with 3 sections inside it, and I think this is really, really good semantic HTML. Ooh, so this is a really, really good one. So Mel's saying, hey, isn't the main element giving a really strong semantic clue to search engine bots about what this page is really about? And this is a really, really good answer. So it's not just, so it's giving any kind of machine, and by default, the machines that enable our users, a hint about what's the main point of this page, what's it really about. And I saw you mention it's really hard to understand how these tags are used for machines to read when we haven't really focused on that yet. Like, it's still pretty abstract. Yeah, I think some of this will just start making more and more sense with time, but this is really, really good feedback. So I'm going to pass this back along. I still see a couple more good questions, and I'm not ignoring these. So some of these I'm just going to grab at the end if that's okay. So we're going to check our code. Oh, everything's fine. This is creating an H2 element. I'm going to skip that. I'm very cruel. So where am I? Who am I? I'm going to skip ahead maybe to step 7. Is that where I wanted to be? We're going to keep skipping ahead a little bit. I want to get to where we're doing. Here we are. That's where I wanted to be. Here on step 9, we see something we haven't seen before. We see an HTML entity. We want to write, so here, I want to write a P element under my block quote. Oh, heck, where am I? Who am I? That's not very reassuring when your instructor is asking who they are. Here, I want to write something that effectively says, I'm going to drop the text in here. I want something that presents this text. Oh gosh, not quite this text. I want something, let me do it properly this time. I want this text to show on my website. M dash, Quincy Lawson, How to Learn to Code and Get a Developer Job, full book. I bet the full book is going to show I bet we'll put a link in there eventually. But I'm not going to just type in the dash. How weird, how strange. What do we think an HTML entity might mean? Yeah. And I'm so sorry that I'm intentionally being cruel to you, because this is the kind of thing we're going to stop and think about. The big question I have is, why can't I just write the M dash? Why can't I put in here, oh, not HTML entity. Why can't I put in here Quincy Lawson, How to Learn to Code and Get a Developer Job? That works. Why can't I just put the M dash in here? It technically works. I can see it, but there's a reason I shouldn't be doing that. Oh, 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 oh. Here, we're going to write M dash ampersand, M dash, and then a colon. And the reason we're going to do this is there's some characters in HTML that have meaning. Similarly, if I wanted to use an angle bracket in my text, see we've got it highlighting red. This is because by default, when your browser sees some of these characters that you use in writing your HTML, it's going to say, oh, do you know what? I see that M dash, or I see that angle bracket. I bet we're doing an element, or I bet this is something about the semantic structure or about the HTML content of the page. And when we want to use one of those as a character, we need to go ahead and look up the HTML entity that we're going to be using. Let me grab the MDN link for that. Ha ha ha. Oh gosh. So character reference is another way to, sorry, you had me chuckling. Oh yeah, if you found a really nice resource for special characters, please post it. So character reference is another great way to say this. Character references or HTML entities are used as replacements for characters that are usually reserved in HTML. So the angle brackets or the quotation marks, and these are usually reserved because we want to do something with them. Yeah, we use them in our HTML, so it's kind of weird to have them as a character. And this is really especially cruel, but I am not going to finish the rest of these for you. I mean, I'm not doing any of them for you because going through and putting all of this different content in the different sections is going to feel really, really useful. Yeah, sorry. I'm coming back to our notes. I see a bunch of questions, so please. And Alistair makes a really good point to say, okay. So yes, our browser doesn't want us to use these elements because our browser uses them to mean something in HTML. So these are reserved HTML entities, but also sometimes it's a pain to find on a keyboard. Like, oh, if I have memorized the HTML entity code for an M dash, yeah, it might be easier to use. Oh gosh, our regular. Oh, so y'all go ahead and ask me any questions you've got, and we'll do those, and I'll talk about the solo work for you to please do after this because today felt really light. Tomorrow we've got some reading. Ooh, actually, hang on, Uladil. You could set the keyboard on a Mac to do an M dash if you do a double dash. Stop it. Okay, I haven't set that up yet, but I believe you. I am, however, going to go check that immediately. Ah, nice. So, we'll talk about terminals later. Don't you make me make everybody's day harder than it needs to be before it is. So we're coming in. Mel's been looking at the robot.txt file. Gosh. So we haven't talked in great detail about robots.txt, but a robot.txt file is a text, just a .txt extension file, just that you can include with your website files. So you've got your index.html file, you've got your styles.css, which we'll talk about soon, I promise. And you can also have a robot.txt file, and that lets you give it permission for specific bots to crawl your site or ban certain bots. In a perfect world, banning them on robots.txt means they won't come visit, but the web is pretty rude these days. So the question here is, do using quotes and abbreviations and time, so does using these semantic elements make it possible for bots and crawlers to display information from your page in search? Yes and no. So we're talking about two different concepts, I think. The robot.txt file, which we haven't covered in detail, is sort of I like to think of it as a guest list for a party. So it's saying, hey, this is my website. I've made a list of the bots that I want to be allowed to come to my website party. Or, you know what? I don't like all of these bots. Some of these bots, I've put them on the no list for my party. Well, that does have an impact on if the search engine crawler can't visit your website because it's banned via robot.txt, it's going to make it harder to index the information on your site and have your page displayed on search. But also, even if it is allowed to visit your site and it does come and crawl, once it is allowed to visit your site and crawl, using these semantic elements makes it easier and faster for it to understand more information. We're going way ahead, and Mel is saying, hey, does JavaScript have a way to get the current time from someone on your website and populate the time zone field? So there's a couple of different ways to do this. We will talk about this in more detail later, and we could talk about this in more detail in Discord, just because I don't want to sidetrack everybody on JavaScript too quickly. But we can also get user time browser. Where is it? So we can absolutely do that, and that's getting the client or browser time zone. Is this it? Edit, it's not get time. Oof, that's separate, that's cursed. Yes, we absolutely can. We can do a bunch of really, really fancy things with JavaScript and time. I'm going to give you all of them. Anybody clicking on this and freaking out, it's cool, it's cool, it's cool. We're not doing JavaScript at all this boot camp, just a preview. Here's all of the different things we can do with date and time. And I am live on stream, so I've completely forgotten what we usually use to get a user's date and time, but I will get it and drop it in the Discord immediately, or Edda will cheat and help me. Gosh. Oh, wait. Going back to when we were talking about HTML reserved entities, Miss Rachel was so right, and I just zipped right past it and didn't see it, where you were like, hey, is the reason that we don't just type these in our text on our website. This is because our browser expects them to have a different meaning. Yes, yes, yes. Somebody said, are regular brackets reserved? I remember at some point typing them into VS Code. Oh, cool, 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 cool. Yes, okay. I don't know if regular brackets are reserved. Let's check. But VS Code is going to VS Code is going to highlight them because regular brackets can be used for a lot of things in web development. So they can be used. I'm not sure if they're reserved. Hmm. Do, 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 do. And really helpfully, at the character reference glossary, I'm going to drop that into the link again. Here's all of the ones that MDM thinks are available. A full list of HTML named character reference can be found in the, oh heck, oh heck. Ah, this is a spec. This is a standards documentation, or documentation of a standard. Wow, there's so many. I love the. I'm not going to get sidetracked. Oh gosh, you're not even looking at that. I just clicked on the full list and look how delightful it is. Look at all of these different characters that we can use the codes to access. This is so exciting. But this is not what you asked. And yeah, it doesn't look, oh, heck, heck, heck. It doesn't look like that is contained in here. A very small subset of useful character name references. Where's the entities? Yeah. Hmm. A pattern of characters. Yeah. I don't think it is, but I'm not getting the answer right away. I'm very sorry. It is immensely unsatisfying. Where are we? Who are we? Gosh, I've been throwing a bunch of stuff in here. So I think those might be all of the big questions. I'm sorry that some of my answers were, well, I don't know. Paul makes a really solid point to say, hey, sometimes we also want to think about VPN use. And VPN is like where we want to um, hide our computer's location. And Ulittle makes a much better point than I was making. So I was saying, hey, we might want to put regular braces, those smooth braces in because we can do things with web development. And Ulittle's like, no, 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 Jess, be specific. And saying VS Code is highlighting these because we might be able to put JavaScript in our HTML, and they are reserved in JavaScript. We're not going to cover JavaScript in this course, but we will just do a little bit of what does JavaScript look like in our HTML. Yeah. So we've got folks saying, yeah, emoji are great, emoji aren't great. That's fine. But if you do want to use emoji, you need to make sure to set your character set to UTA. UT. You need to set your character set correctly, the way we've asked for. I'm going to bounce around one more time because I'm going to ask you very, very nicely. I'm going to come all the way to the top to do some of this solo work before the next class. And I'm going to do kind of a mean instructor thing where I'm going to give you some really mixed messages. So we're talking about specialized semantic HTML elements. And to be honest, these elements are so specialized that if you don't memorize them, if you don't hang on to them, it's not going to hurt you. So mathematical equations and chemical formulas, if you're the kind of person who's going to be using these elements, you already know it. Gosh, you know, if you're blogging a lot these days, I think computer code, how do we represent that in HTML, is probably the one that folks in this course are the most likely to use. And then we have U and S elements, where there's technically some semantic reasons we could use those. But really, these elements are sort of leftovers from when we used to use them to style things. These days, 99% of the time, if I see somebody using an U, which results in an underline, or semantically can non-specifically highlight something, or an S which strikes through, usually when I see people using these as HTML elements, I want to push them to use CSS instead. And we're also going to talk about Ruby elements. I love Ruby elements, but Ruby elements are generally only used for l- uh, words or characters to put pronunciation above them. Really, they're only going to be used by web developers who are using one of a couple of East Asian languages. If you are working in that space, you already know it. But we're going to also break down and look at build an event hub. And so we're going to look at that in the next course or the next session tomorrow and ask you to finish that on your own, creatively, weirdly. We're going to go through the HTML, all of the semantic HTML review and look at our notes. And I will ask you to take the semantic HTML quiz by yourself, no sharing. We can't. Oh gosh, Matthew, this is a really good point. Ha ha ha. Matthew was saying, hey, do these Ruby elements smell like Ruby, the programming language? Which is such a good question. I should, earlier, I said that a couple of things are cursed in programming, and one of them is naming. And naming will come up again and again as a joke because it's hard to name your files, it's hard to name your variables when we learn also, just lots of things in tech have the same names. So we're not covering it in this course, but Ruby is a programming language that you can use to do a whole bunch of different things. And the Ruby programming language and the Ruby HTML element have nothing in common. I'm very sorry. Um, sorry. Everything's terrible, but Ruby, the programming language, can't hurt us yet. We're just going to talk really briefly about Ruby, the HTML element, and I promise that 99% of y'all won't have to work with it. I do, and I really like it, but I'm a languages weirdo. All right, so tomorrow I'll see all of y'all, try and get through as much of this as possible, and you will be with me again tomorrow. Thank you so much. And these were stunning questions. I'm really, really excited. Bye, team.